we heard a lot about the bad folks in there. I see one person who's one of the good folks, and he happens to be my representative. And he got elected because, in large part, the efforts of Indivisible and a lot of you. Steve Birch. You're doing a great job, Steve. Keep it up. As we rally today on the steps of the Idaho State Capitol, we have many unanswered questions, and we require answers. We simply cannot fill our roles as citizens if we're unable to evaluate the president's conduct. And we cannot evaluate that conduct unless we have a chance to read the full Mueller report. Not a 4-page cherry-picked summary written by an attorney general who won his job by promising to have the president's back, but the full report. Now, when William Barr auditioned for the job, he sent to the White House a 20-page memorandum in which he gave an extremely expansive view of presidential power, suggesting that the president has all-encompassing constitutional authority over actions by the executive branch in enforcing the law. To that I say, poppycock. That memorandum, though, had its intended effect. Trump wanted someone who would protect him, and Barr was the man for the job. But you know what? The Attorney General is not the president's lawyer. He's our lawyer. He's the people's lawyer. His job is not to do what the president wishes. His job is to uphold the rule of law. Now, former Supreme Court Justice Sutherland wrote about the role of a government attorney. And he said, a government attorney is the representative not of an ordinary party to a controversy, but of a sovereignty whose obligation to govern impartially is as compelling as its obligation to govern at all. Do we have confidence today that the Attorney General has acted impartially? No, we don't. We do not. He is eroding confidence in our federal justice system. And having been a part of that system for so many years, I have great reverence for the Department of Justice. No, it's not perfect, but it's one hell of an institution. And the people who work day in and day out to serve our country deserve better than a leader who puts party before country. Now, just yesterday evening, we learned in a report from the New York Times that people close to the Mueller investigation have expressed frustration that Barr's characterization of the Mueller report is, let's say, not 100% accurate. But you know, for 2 years, the American people have patiently waited for Special Counsel Mueller to complete his investigation and make his findings. And from all outward appearances, Robert Mueller and his team of prosecutors and investigators operated with the utmost professionalism. They cut square corners, they worked long hours, and in a city known for leaking like a proverbial sieve, the Mueller investigation was absolutely leak-proof. Now that Mueller has finished his work and submitted his report, it languishes on the Attorney General's desk. There is no legitimate excuse for this delay. Could it be that Barr wanted to allow the president's narrative of complete exoneration to fully cement in the minds of the American people before producing even a redacted version of Congress? Yeah. But you know what? It seems finally that the public is not so easily fooled. Your presence here today is evidence of that. Just 1 week ago, Mr. Trump said he wanted the full report to be made public. In fact, he declared that millions upon millions of Americans wanted to see the report. Indeed, we do. But now, the president rattles his saber and threatens to direct the Attorney General to hide the entire document. What has changed in a week's time? Why has Mr. Trump, who was so quick to take a premature victory lap, now become afraid of letting the report see the light of day? Perhaps it is because poll after poll tells us that the American people aren't buying what he's selling. Trump claims the report gave him full and complete and total and utter exoneration. It did nothing of the kind. Now, Mr. Barr has noted that the federal rules of criminal procedure forbid the production of grand jury testimony and materials. You know, that's true. What is also true is that the rule of grand jury secrecy is subject to exceptions. For instance, a government attorney can petition a federal court to authorize release of grand jury materials. Ken Starr was quick to do it in the Whitewater investigation. And Attorney General Barr could have made the very same kind of request of a judge 10 days ago. But to the best of our knowledge, he has done nothing more than sit on his hands and whistle in the wind. His failure to take this obvious step to seek judicial authorization to release grand jury materials directly contradicts his testimony at his confirmation hearing. Remember, that's when he promised under oath to make public as much of the report as possible. He is breaking that promise. And it is important to remember that Mueller's conclusion that he could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt the crime of conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia does not mean he found no wrongdoing. There are other standards besides beyond a reasonable doubt. There is preponderance of the evidence. There is clear and convincing evidence. And simply because the evidence did not meet the very high beyond a probable doubt, or beyond a reasonable doubt standard, does not mean there was not wrongdoing. In fact, we, the American people, have already heard so much with our own ears and seen so much with our own eyes, and we will not be gaslighted. We know that Donald Trump Jr. and other top-level Trump campaign officials met secretly in Trump Tower with a Russian lawyer who promised dirt on Trump's opponent. We know that Trump himself concocted a false story about this meeting, and that during the campaign he openly and publicly called on Russia, if you're listening, to provide dirt on Trump's opponent. We know that Trump himself concocted false stories and that members of his campaign team repeatedly lied about meetings and conversations with Russians. So if there was no conspiracy, why did they lie? We need to know. Something was going on. What was it? We need to see that report. And when it comes to obstruction of justice, we need to know why the Attorney General rushed in to decide the issue when Robert Mueller did not. Now, Special Counsel Mueller is no shrinking violet. He has made very tough calls in some of the most complex and challenging investigations on some of the most notorious criminal actors. We need to know why he did not make the call and what he intended to happen next. Did Robert Mueller expect the Attorney General to take it upon himself to draw a conclusion that McCullough refrained from drawing? No, I don't think so. The whole concept of a special counsel is to take prosecutorial decision-making out of the hands of political appointees, such as William Barr. I believe Robert Mueller intended that the report go straight to Congress and that the responsibility to decide rested with Congress. But today we cannot know for sure because the report has not been made public. Now, our founding fathers wisely divided federal power among the three branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And Congress has a role in our separation of powers, our checks and balances system of government. And it is entitled to exercise its oversight responsibilities. You know, Mr. Trump bellows that congressional requests for production of the full Mueller report are fueled by angry Democrats. But, yeah, that's a few. But he forgets that the vote in the House, as we've heard from our previous wonderful speakers, was unanimous. Every Republican voted for full disclosure. Yes. And poll after poll tells us the overwhelming majority of American people want to see the full report, including a vast majority of Republicans. We are not angry Democrats, Mr. President. We are deeply concerned Americans. Yes. We are Americans who paid for the investigation and who have every right to see it. Now, I'm going to close my remarks by quoting Sally Yates. Do you remember Sally Yates? She was the acting attorney general who wanted the Trump White House to be warned that Michael Flynn might be compromised, and then got fired. Well, Sally Yates recently wrote that the Mueller investigation was, and I quote, not about some tangential issue. It was about a foreign adversary's attempt to subvert our election, cutting to the very core of our democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, with each passing day, Congress is limited in its knowledge of what really happened and hamstrung in its ability to keep our elections free from Russian interference. It is worth noting that to this day, to this very day, Mr. Trump has ignored the findings of his own intelligence agencies and taken no steps whatsoever to protect future elections. Whether he conspired or not, he benefited from Russia's actions, yes. And it appears he wants to benefit again. Yes. Yes. So I have a message for our Attorney General. Mr. Barr, it is time you honor your oath of office. It is time you keep the promise you made to the United States Senate and the American people at your confirmation hearing. It is time you act with complete honesty and transparency. Quit stalling, quit stonewalling, release the full report, and do it today.